Hey guys, welcome back! Minecraft 1.21 is officially out, which is incredibly exciting, but as you may expect, I'm not yet playing on the update. Unfortunately, I'll have to wait at least a little bit longer for the various mods I use in my world to update, but in the meantime, there is plenty of work to be getting on with on our island. And today, the first thing I really want to tackle is the terraforming on the edge of our island around our witch temple, because, well, while our pyramid does make quite an effective distraction, you can't help but notice that the area behind it has a worrying resemblance to a chunk error. And I mentioned last time that this pathway feels a little cramped, so I think this whole area just needs a little bit more time and attention, so let's get that sorted. Well, that is looking significantly less like a chunk error. Plus, the river is a bit wider and doesn't look quite so artificial, and this side of the island is also much more wavy than the super straight line that we started out with. And while it's not super detailed or anything, I think given it's directly behind our pyramid, it really doesn't need to be. I don't want to make it a feature or anything, and it's not anywhere that we're particularly going to be looking at since you really do have to go out of your way to see it, so now it's serviceable and not an actual eyesore, I think it's good enough to be going on with. Although I do have to admit that a small part of me is very tempted to turn this cave into an amethyst geode. I may have a problem with building amethyst geodes in my world, but it could be kind of cool for either a place where they mined the crystal or a secondary, slightly more secret place of worship. I don't know, we'll see. It's definitely not a big part of the plan, it's just a little itch in the back of my head. But swiftly moving on, I didn't specifically mention it, but the grass on this side of the pyramid has been in a weird 2-level state ever since I built the temple, and there's also more cursed vines here, but we don't need to talk about that. What we need to talk about is the fact that the weird grass that was going on is actually now fixed, and the grass is the proper height all the way to the water, which is brilliant because it means that when we have an actual idea for what to build here, it's all ready and waiting for us. And I also ended up taking out a chunk of land over at the top here, and I wasn't 100% sure when I started taking it out, but now that it's gone, I really do think it was the right decision. It really opens this whole area out and makes it feel way less cramped, and honestly, now that this bit is looking better, I really do want to try and put at least something cool on this side of the pyramid because it's quite a nice space. But for now, let's focus on this side of the pyramid. And as I mentioned at the start, the main goal for this area was to make the pathway we built last episode less cramped because it was very close to the edge of the island, and I'd say that we successfully achieved that. It's still not exactly spacious, but it doesn't feel quite so much like walking along a tightrope, which is brilliant. And we also widened this section of the island as well, because as the sign says, I want to build a garden here. In fact, I think that's probably what we're going to tackle next. But I wanted to make sure that it doesn't end up feeling cramped like the pathway did. And I mean, there is of course a pretty decent chance that we'll have to do a few tweaks as we actually build the garden, because you are never going to get these things right the first time, but let's just see how it goes. I think that is perfect. I really wanted to go for a more formal garden approach here because I felt like it could look really, really cool. And then as I was actually thinking about the design I wanted to make, I ended up with this, which I guess is probably a little bit less of a formal garden and more like a monastery garden in design, or maybe a kitchen garden because most of the sections are filled with crops, but either way, I really like it. And I also feel like it kind of fits this place. I mean, the people who used to run the temples here would have needed to eat, and so I like the idea that they had this little garden outside where they grew wheat and carrots and potatoes to cook up, along with some ancient flowers that they grew to decorate for festivals and events and such. And the torch flowers and pitcher pods seemed like the right choice of flower to grow here, since this is more of a long-lost civilization, and so I imagine these ancient seeds were probably just seeds to them. I also really would have liked to have a bit more variety in the texture of the hedges, but unfortunately the swamp just makes most leaves look pretty dull, so I ended up sticking with the azalea leaves since they at least stay nice and bright despite the biome. And I could have sprinkled in some flowering azalea leaves, but I think these hedges work a bit better being more of a background element, so we can always use the flowering leaves elsewhere. Then we also have this pathway design, which I think I might want to use as the main pathway block palette for the whole island, because I really don't want to leave it as the path blocks. That just makes for a quick and easy to move way to map things out, and this makes for quite a nice design. It's detailed and different, with the basalt and deep slate being able to be placed in different directions to create the variety, while also being pretty unobtrusive. I mean, it definitely isn't a loud design that will draw your attention. I kind of feel like you don't even really notice it when walking along, but it's got some subtlety and detail when you actually take a closer look, which I really like. But we have plenty of time to decide the overall path design. I think that will probably be one of the things I leave to much later in the project, at least until all the main points of interest and buildings are in, just to avoid having to move things later on, which would be a right pain. So we'll see if a different design comes to mind before then, but currently this is definitely top of my list. But speaking of the different buildings we want to build here, I think that's what I want to tackle next episode, specifically both the small building for right here and also the tall building that's going to be up on the hill. I've been playing around with some designs and I think I'm really starting to get somewhere with it, so I am very excited to finish those off and actually get to see them in place on our island. But for today, I think we made some great progress. We've got this lovely little garden, and the terraforming around the pyramid, which has been sitting in the back of my mind, is finally sorted, which is such a relief. And as I mentioned, I am very much looking forward to next episode, where either we'll be on update 121 if enough mods have been updated, or we'll get to tackle the two buildings I just talked about, and both of those are very exciting prospects. So until then, thank you guys for watching, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!